So it is, as I mentioned at the beginning, this sort of season of Thanksgiving, right? All of the decorations have changed in the stores and all around us, and some of us are in the process already of changing the decorations in our home, maybe cleaning up, getting ready for family to visit, or getting ready to pack and go visit with family, maybe steeling ourselves to spend some time with family, however that goes for us. And much like the other things that go on in the course of our lives, Thanksgiving is important for us to talk about on a Sunday morning because it's what we're dealing with in the rest of our lives. And it turns out there's some connection between Sunday morning and giving thanks. The first Thanksgiving in North America didn't happen when the Pilgrims landed and had a feast with their Native American neighbors, right? It actually happened over and over again because Thanksgiving looked like something that the church did with some regularity. Every time the harvest came in, the church declared a day of Thanksgiving, and the businesses closed down, and people took the opportunity to worship together and to give thanks to God for all that God had provided. There might be a Thanksgiving or two in the fall as different crops come in. There might be one in the spring, late spring, as those spring crops come in. Opportunities to stop and to reflect. Yes, the third Thursday in November is a great day to stop and reflect and give thanks. But so is any other of the 364 days out of the year. And so we talk about what it means to give thanks. And I want to preface this a little bit with how we talk about giving thanks. St. Paul gives great advice at the end of 1 Thessalonians, so much so that we sometimes use it as our dismissal for Sunday mornings, a reminder for who we are called to be, right? He says, rejoice, be glad, rejoice when? Always, rejoice always, give thanks when? Always, in every circumstance. Now, we often think about Thanksgiving much like our European forebearers who landed here, right? We think about Thanksgiving as something we do when the crops come in, when things are good, right? When somebody is healed, when we get a Christmas bonus at work, when something goes right for the people we love. We think, this is a good time to give thanks. Look how loved I am. But that's not what Paul says, is it? Paul says, give thanks in all circumstances. And he says this to a church and to a congregation that has experienced hardship. He says this to Christians who face persecution both from their pagan Greco-Roman neighbors and from their Jewish neighbors as far as, what's this weird Christianity stuff and what's wrong with you? And you can't come over to my house because you're one of those Christian people. They knew what it was to lose their job because of their faith. They knew what it was to endure financial hardship for varieties of reasons. They knew what it was to see their loved ones die from illnesses that today would be preventable, but then certainly were not. Give thanks in all circumstances, says Paul. So here's my preface. Learning to give thanks is kind of like learning to be peaceful, serene, and calm, okay? So when you yourself are learning to be more patient and learning to be more kind, one thing that's not helpful is to tell someone else that they should be calm and patient and kind. Telling someone to be grateful is sort of like telling someone to be calm, right? Whether that's a spouse or a parent or a child or a coworker or a neighbor, You don't go, Megan, it's not a big deal. You should just be calm. That does not end well for me. Right? You can't tell someone else in the midst of their upsetness to be calm. You can tell yourself to be calmer. You can tell yourself to be more peaceful and patient. But that doesn't mean you should go sticking your finger in someone else's upsetness and telling them to calm down. Never in the history of all humankind has anybody calmed down by being told to calm down. Giving thanks is like that. Paul says give thanks in all circumstances, and I believe in all circumstances we should give thanks. But that doesn't mean when somebody has something terrible happen in their lives, we ought to lean over to them and go, there's probably something in this you should give thanks for. It's a great way to get punched, isn't it? Right? It's great advice for me to tell myself to look for the thing for which I can give thanks. It is terrible advice for me to talk to somebody else about how they should not be sad or angry or upset, but instead should give thanks. The way we comfort people is by sitting with them in their anger and their hurt. Right? A couple weeks ago, I did a funeral for a family in which a young woman, mid-60s, had died suddenly on the operating table. Do you think it would have helped me to say to them, there is so much to give thanks in this circumstance? No. We weep with those who weep, right? Now, in my own life, I might say about my own loved one, I'm grateful they didn't suffer. I'm grateful they didn't linger in a nursing home for years, because I know my loved ones would not want that. I'm grateful it was quick and painless and peaceful. I might say to myself, right? There's a difference between what we say to ourselves and what we say to others. And Christians are notoriously bad about this when people are struggling in their lives. We love to tell them to find the good in the midst of the worst situations in life. It doesn't earn us any friends. We may be right, we may be technically right, but we're not being compassionate and loving. So St. Paul says, give thanks in all circumstances. It is now 10:35 on a Sunday morning. I want you to think about everything that has led you up to this. Close your eyes. I want you to think about everything that has led you up to this point in your day today. Everything that's happened up to this point. What do you have to give thanks for today in terms of what has happened up to this point? Let's get some examples. What is something you could give thanks for today? Anybody? Good breakfast. You too? Good breakfast? Your kids? Coffee? Visiting family? Our health? Oh, it's not oppressively hot outside this week at this moment? A good night's sleep? The existence of electronics? A nice shower in the morning? A snuggly cat? Children in worship. Man, we could keep going, right? Like, I'm going to stop there, but we could keep going. It's only a couple hours into the day, folks. And we've already got an ongoing list of things that we could be grateful for. I don't know about you, but as I was growing up, I always thought that there were kind of two sorts of people. There were people who were generally happy, and there were people who were generally grumpy. Right? And you're either one or the other. It's just who I am. I can't do anything about it. How many times have you said that about yourself? It's just the way that I am. What's that? She's kicking you. I don't know. Well, I'll tell you what, Gary. I always thought that was just the way that we are. that I can't change that about ourselves. But the truth is, we are who we choose to be in that regard. And it's not ultimately, we say choose joy, but choose joy is not actually the first step. The first step is being grateful. Here's the thing that happened. As I asked you to close your eyes and think about what you're grateful for, every face, even Gary's, smiled. Everybody smiled. You can't help but smile when you think about what you're grateful for. You can't help but be more joyful when you think about what you are grateful for. It's not possible. Joyful people are grateful people, and grateful people are joyful people. You go to Barnes & Noble or any other bookstore in the area, and there's whole shelves dedicated to how to be happier, right? Like you could spend your lifetime studying happiness and how to be less grumpy and how to be happier with what's happening in your life when terrible things are happening. One thing, every day, stop and think about what you are grateful about. As you get to the end of your day, say, what am I grateful for today? Every day. Even when you don't want to, especially when you don't want to. That's the secret. There is always something. There is always something. Even if it's just, I am grateful this stupid day is over. There is always something. Yeah, Mary. There's always something. And when you find that thing, or things more often than not, to be grateful for, it's awful hard to not start smiling, even on your worst day. Grateful people are joyful people. Even on our worst days. Even on our worst days. We have a roof overhead, water when we turn on the shower. Another day, we're upright. Every day there is something. More often than not, it's more than we can count once we start looking. And the thing is, once you start looking, you can't stop seeing it. If you know that at the end of today, you're going to ask yourself, what am I grateful for? As you're going through the day, you're going to start looking for it. And you're going to see it. And you're going to smile. Because grateful people are joyful people. God doesn't require that you give thanks. God doesn't need you to tell God thank you. God won't shake God's head at you and say, oh, you're such a bad person if you don't say thank you enough. But becoming a grateful person will make your life better. There are very few promises in life, but I promise you that if you become more grateful, your life will improve. If you become more grateful, it will be hard not to smile more often. If you become more grateful, it will be hard not to see the good in even the worst of days. We are here at Spirit of Joy, joyful people. But first, we are grateful. On the third Sunday in November, and on the other 364.